"You will come with me," the lonely herder said to the crow woman standing alone in the flea market. Caleb had learned to read a place the way some men read the sky. The flea market hung over the canyon like a crooked necklace, stitched together from old cargo pods and cracked shuttle hulls. Weld lines glowed dull red where repairs had been made too fast. Lamps swung from chains. Wind moaned through gaps in the metal, carrying the smell of fried dough, engine oil, and desert dust. People said anything could be bought here. Filters for oxygen masks, spare drone wings, old earth coins, alien spices sealed in glass, even maps that promised water where there was none. Caleb did not come for romance or trouble. He came because he needed a new coupling for his herd's water cart, and because the market was the only place within 3 days' ride that sold parts that still worked. He moved through the crowd with the slow calm of a man who spent most of his life alone. His boots were desert-worn, his coat patched at the elbows, a coil of braided rope hung from his belt beside a small toolkit. At his side walked a quiet pack animal, half machine, half flesh, built to carry weight and keep going when the sand tried to swallow everything. Caleb was a herder on the edge of human space, where towns looked like old frontier settlements but the stars above were real and sharp. Instead of horses, some riders used sand skimmers. Instead of cattle, some folks raised thick-skinned, heat-proof grazers that could survive on thorn plants and salty water. Caleb's herd was waiting outside the canyon, penned behind a portable fence field. He needed that coupling today or tomorrow would become harder. The market was loud. A vendor shouted prices in 3 languages. A pair of teenagers tested a hoverboard that bucked like a wild mule. An elderly woman sold hand-stitched gloves designed to work with neural gloves underneath. Music came from somewhere thin and tinny, like a radio trapped inside a box. Caleb walked past tables of strange goods without slowing much. He had learned not to stare. On the frontier, staring could invite a challenge. He nodded once to a man in a battered miner's helmet. He stepped aside to let a family pass. 2 adults and a small child with bright eyes and a toy drone buzzing around his head. Then Caleb saw her. She stood near a stack of crates in a shadowed corner, not selling anything, not buying anything. She was simply there, like a quiet mark in the middle of noise. Her hair was dark and braided, and the beadwork at the ends of her braids caught the lamplight. She wore a long coat of deep brown, stitched with patterns that reminded Caleb of wings and storm clouds. Under the coat, he could see pieces of hard armor, old, repaired, and worn with pride. Her face was calm, but her eyes moved like a hawk's, not nervous, not scared, watchful, like someone who had learned that danger often smiled before it struck. Around her, people gave space without thinking. Some avoided her. Some glanced at her and then looked away quickly. It was the kind of reaction Caleb had seen before, usually aimed at someone wearing a uniform from the wrong side of a past conflict, or at someone who carried a story folks preferred not to hear. Caleb slowed, though he did not mean to. He felt the tug of an old loneliness in his chest, the kind that came at night when the campfire died down and the desert wind made the tent cloth whisper. He had lived with that feeling so long it felt like part of his bones. A stall owner nearby was talking to a customer. "Crow," the stall owner muttered under his breath, like the word itself was a warning. Caleb pretended not to hear, but the word stayed with him. He had heard of the Crow clans out here. Some were peaceful traders, some were fierce defenders of their land routes, and some were rumored to be caught between bigger powers fighting over the frontier. The woman in the corner did not look like someone seeking to fight. She looked like someone expecting one. Caleb turned toward a table piled with metal pieces, acting as if he was just shopping. He scanned parts with his eyes, but his attention kept drifting back. The woman's hands were empty. No weapon was visible. But Caleb could tell she was armed anyway. Some people carried weapons on their belts, some carried them in their posture. A group of men drifted close to her. Caleb noticed them because they were too casual, too loose, like wolves pretending to be dogs. Their clothing was clean in the way that said they did not work in the dust. Their eyes were sharp and cold, measuring. One of them spoke to the woman. Caleb could not hear the words, but he saw the man smile. It was not friendly, the woman answered, short and steady. Her chin lifted a fraction. She was not afraid, but she was alone, and Caleb knew what it meant to be surrounded by a crowd while still being alone. The men stepped closer. Caleb set down the part he had been holding. He did not rush. He did not push. He simply walked. "Ma'am," one of the men said, louder now, like he wanted others to listen. "You're far from your people." The woman did not move. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in focus. Another man circled behind her, blocking the open space. "You can come quietly," he said, still smiling. Caleb stopped a few steps away. He let his boots plant firm. The noise of the market kept going around them, bargaining, laughing, arguing, like water around a rock. But Caleb could feel the tension, like a wire pulled tight. He spoke in a calm, even voice. "Is there a problem here?" One of them looked Caleb up and down and decided he was nothing special. A working herder. "A nobody." "No problem," the man said. "This doesn't involve you." Caleb looked at the woman. She met his gaze for half a second. In that quick moment, he saw something there. Exhaustion wrapped in discipline, sorrow held behind steady eyes. He had seen that look in the mirror after long nights. Caleb's mouth went dry. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. But his instincts, sharpened by years on the frontier, told him something important. These men were not here to bargain. He also knew something else. If he walked away, he would think about it for the rest of his life. The woman's eyes flicked toward the exit ramp of the market, then toward the men. She was weighing chances. Caleb could almost see the calculations. He made a decision that surprised even him. "You will come with me," he said to her. The words landed in the air like a stone dropped into still water. The men blinked. The woman stared at him, her expression unreadable. Caleb heard his own voice and understood how it sounded, like an order, like a claim. He hated that. He corrected it quickly, without apologizing, because apology would sound weak to men like these. "I mean," he added, keeping his voice low and steady, "if you want to leave this place without trouble, come with me. I'm headed out." "Who are you?" Caleb did not answer the question. He did not need to. He just kept his eyes on the man and his body between them and the woman. The man closest to him took a half step forward. Move. Caleb did not move. He had stood against stampedes and sandstorms. He had held a rope with burning hands to save an animal from falling into a sinkhole. This moment was different, but fear was still fear, and courage was still a choice. The woman spoke for the first time loud enough for Caleb to hear. Her voice was smooth, controlled. "Why?" It was a simple question, but it carried weight. "Because you're alone," he said. Honest. "And they're not?" Her gaze sharpened, as if she tested the truth of that answer. Then she made a small motion with her hand, barely a nod. "Fine," she said. The men's smiles vanished. The closest one reached inside his coat. Not fast, but fast enough. Caleb's hand moved, too. He did not draw a weapon. He snapped his rope out in a practiced loop, not to harm, but to distract. The rope cracked across the air and slapped the man's wrist, knocking his hand away from whatever he was reaching for. The man cursed, more startled than hurt. In the same instant, the woman moved. She stepped sideways, graceful and quick, slipping past the man trying to circle behind her. She did not strike him. She simply used his balance against him, turning his shoulder with a firm push so he stumbled into a stack of crates. The crates rattled and toppled, spilling cheap metal parts across the floor. People nearby jumped back. A vendor shouted, angry. Caleb caught the woman's elbow lightly, not gripping, not forcing, guiding her toward the exit ramp. "This way." They moved together, not running yet, but fast. Caleb's pack animal followed, obedient. Behind them, the men tried to recover. One shouted something into a wrist communicator. Caleb caught a few words. Target, moving, not woman, not traveler. Target. That single word sent a chill down Caleb's back. They reached the ramp that led down to the canyon floor where skimmers and bikes waited. A gust of wind slammed up the canyon, flapping coats and carrying sand into the air like smoke. Caleb looked left and right. The market guards were nowhere close. They would show up late, as they always did. The guards served the market, not justice. The woman ran beside him now. Her breathing was steady, controlled. She moved like someone trained to endure. "What's your name?" Caleb asked as they reached his sand skimmer, a long, narrow craft with 2 stabilizers and a cargo rack. The woman hesitated only a moment. "Tala," she said. Caleb nodded. "Caleb." They climbed onto the skimmer. Caleb started the engine. The craft hummed, then lifted slightly, hovering inches above the ground. He signaled his pack animal to latch onto the rear tow bar. It did, locking in with a click. As they shot out of the canyon, Caleb glanced back. He saw the men at the top ramp, watching, not chasing on foot. One raised a hand and pointed, like he was marking the sky. Caleb's stomach tightened. These men had resources. They were not just local bullies. The desert opened ahead, Endless sand, sharp rocks, and distant ridges that looked like broken teeth. Caleb pushed the skimmer faster, the wind tearing at his coat. Tala sat behind him, balanced and calm, one hand holding the side rail, the other resting near the hidden edge of her armor, as if ready for whatever came. "Those men," Caleb said, keeping his eyes forward. "Why are they after you?" The silence lasted long enough for the question to grow heavier. Finally, she said, "Because I saw something I should not have seen." "What did you see?" Tala's voice dropped lower, almost swallowed by the wind, a message meant to start a war. The skimmer raced on, leaving the flea market behind like a bad memory, but the feeling in Caleb's chest told him the truth. This was not the kind of trouble that ended at the edge of town, and now for reasons he did not fully understand yet, he was part of it. The desert stretched wide under a pale sky, endless waves of sand broken only by jagged rock and thin lines of dry grass. Caleb drove the skimmer fast but steady, letting the engine hum instead of roar. Speed helped them escape, but calm kept the machine alive. Out here, broken equipment meant death. Behind him, Tala sat quietly. She did not ask many questions. She watched the horizon, her sharp eyes scanning for movement. The wind pulled at her braids, but her posture stayed strong and balanced, like someone used to long journeys. For nearly an hour, neither of them spoke. Caleb had learned that silence could be comfortable if shared with the right person. Still, curiosity sat heavy in his chest. "You said you saw something," he finally said. "Something meant to start a war." She looked over her shoulder first, checking the sky behind them. Only distant dust followed. "Yes," she said at last. "I worked as a messenger between settlements. Neutral ground. Trusted by many sides. That trust is now broken." Caleb slowed the skimmer slightly as they crossed a ridge. Below them stretched a dry valley where his temporary camp waited, portable fence lines glowing faintly and a cluster of slow-moving shapes inside. His herd. He felt a small relief seeing them safe. "What happened?" he asked. Tala hesitated again, like she measured how much truth to share. "I found a transmission hidden inside a trade network," she said. "A message written to look like an attack order from one tribe against another. But it was false. Someone powerful created it. To make people fight? Yes," she said quietly. "If delivered, it would cause anger, revenge, and chaos. The frontier would burn." Caleb whistled softly under his breath. He had lived through enough conflict to understand how quickly lies turned into violence, and now they think you'll expose it. "They know," she corrected gently. "I already exposed part of it. That is why they hunt me." The skimmer slowed as they approached the camp. Caleb guided it down carefully. Sand blew outward as the machine settled. The herd turned their large heads toward him, curious. They were thick-bodied grazers, built for heat, with heavy hides that shimmered faintly under the sun. Caleb stepped off first. He checked the fence generator automatically, hands moving from habit. Everything looked stable. Tala climbed down after him, her boots touching the sand softly. She looked at the herd with interest. "These are not like the animals I know," she said. "They're not cattle," Caleb replied with a small smile, "but they eat and wander like them. That's enough." He led her toward a shaded tent made from strong woven fabric. Solar panels rested nearby, angled toward the sky. "You can rest here," he said. "Food's simple, water's clean." Tala nodded but did not enter right away. Instead, she watched him move around the camp, checking equipment, feeding one of the animals by hand, tightening a loose strap. There was patience in his movements, care. "You live alone?" she asked. Caleb paused. "Mostly." "Mostly means not always." He exhaled slowly. "Used to have family. Lost them during a border raid years ago. Since then, I travel." Tala did not respond with pity. She only inclined her head slightly, a gesture of respect. "I am sorry," she said. Caleb shrugged lightly, but the sadness still touched his eyes. Life keeps moving. They shared a quiet meal as the sun dropped lower. The desert changed color, shifting from gold to deep orange. Wind softened. Tala ate carefully, watching the horizon even while chewing. Caleb noticed. "You expect them to come?" he asked. "Yes," she said simply. Caleb nodded. "Then we prepare." He showed her where he stored tools and spare energy cells. She examined everything quickly, learning the layout. He handed her a small communicator. "Short range," he said. "If we get separated." She accepted it without hesitation. As darkness settled, stars appeared one by one. The frontier sky was always clear, sharp, Endless. Caleb started a small heat lamp instead of a fire, keeping the light low. They sat opposite each other. "You did not have to help me," Tala said suddenly. Caleb rubbed his hands together slowly. "Maybe not, but I wanted to. You looked like someone who didn't deserve to stand alone while wolves circled." Tala studied him quietly. "You do not know me. But I know people, and I know trouble when I see it. My people once fought humans on this world. Many still believe humans cannot be trusted." "And you?" he asked. "I believe trust is built, not given," she said. Caleb nodded. That felt honest. A sudden sound cut through the night. The distant hum of engines. Both of them stood instantly. Caleb switched off the heat lamp, letting darkness swallow the camp. The herd shifted nervously, sensing tension. Lights appeared far away, small but growing. "They found us faster than I expected," Taylor murmured. Caleb grabbed his gear calmly. "We don't fight unless we must. First rule out here, survive." Its camera fed information to his wrist screen. 3 skimmers approached. "Fast, not locals," Caleb said. "Too clean." Tala's eyes hardened. "They will not stop."
Caleb thought quickly.
Running now would expose the herd. Staying might trap them. He remembered the terrain nearby, a narrow rock passage not far away. "We lead them away," he said. "Give the herd time, then circle back later." They mounted the skimmer again. Caleb guided it toward the open desert, making sure the approaching lights saw them. The chase began immediately. Engines roared behind them. Laser sights flickered briefly across the sand but did not fire yet. The hunters wanted them alive. Caleb pushed the skimmer harder. Wind screamed past them. "You drive like a storm," Tala said, almost impressed. "Been chased before," he replied dryly. They entered a rocky area where tall stone pillars rose from the sand. Caleb wove between them, forcing the pursuing skimmers to slow. A shot flashed past, striking rock and sending sparks into the air. "They're getting impatient," he muttered. Tala shifted closer. "There is a canyon ahead?" "Yes." "Then go there." Caleb trusted her tone. He aimed the skimmer toward the narrow opening between cliffs. Inside, the path twisted sharply. Behind them, one hunter misjudged the turn and slammed into stone. The explosion echoed like thunder. The remaining pursuers continued. Caleb's heart pounded, but his hands stayed steady. He knew this terrain now. He used shadows, sudden turns, and tight spaces to gain distance. Finally, he cut the engine suddenly behind a rock outcrop. Silence fell except for cooling metal. The hunters sped past, unaware. Caleb and Tala waited, breath held. After several minutes, the sounds faded. Caleb let out a slow breath. That bought us time. "You are more than a simple herder." He smiled faintly. "Out here, everyone learns a few tricks." They stayed hidden until the stars shifted higher. Then Caleb restarted the skimmer quietly. "We go back," he said. "Make sure the herd is safe." Tala nodded, but her expression grew thoughtful. "You risk much for me," she said softly. Caleb shrugged. "Guess I don't like bullies." As they rode back through the dark desert together, both understood something had changed between them. Trust had begun to grow, not fast, not easy, but real. And somewhere far away, unseen watchers adjusted their plans, preparing for the next move. The night felt heavier when Caleb and Tala returned toward the camp. The desert wind had grown colder, brushing across the sand like quiet whispers. Caleb drove slowly this time, lights dimmed, engine humming low so they would not draw attention. After the chase through the canyon, he knew their enemies would not give up easily. Tala remained alert behind him. Even in silence, Caleb could feel her focus. She watched every ridge and shadow as if danger could step out of the dark at any moment. When they reached the valley, Caleb stopped the skimmer on high ground first. He lifted a small scope to his eye and scanned the camp. The fence field still glowed faintly. The herd moved calmly. No strange lights. No movement. "They didn't follow us back," he said quietly. Tala nodded but did not relax completely. "They will return. Hunters like patience." The animals greeted him with low sounds, recognizing his presence. He moved among them slowly, checking for injury or stress. One large grazer nudged his shoulder gently, and he scratched behind its thick ear. "They trust you," Tala observed. "Trust is earned," Caleb replied. Then he paused and smiled slightly. "You said something like that earlier." She gave a small nod. Inside the tent, Caleb poured water into 2 metal cups. They sat facing each other while the night stretched around them. The stars looked brighter after the long chase, cold and distant. "We need a plan," Caleb said. Tala took a slow breath. "Yes." She reached into her coat and removed a small data chip wrapped in cloth. Even in the dim light, Caleb could see faint symbols etched along its edge. "This carries the proof," she said. The false message. The one meant to start war. Caleb leaned closer but did not touch it. "And the hunters want that destroyed." Caleb leaned back, thinking. He had spent years avoiding political conflicts. His life had been simple. Move the herd, trade supplies, survive another season. But now the desert felt different, heavier with unseen eyes. "Where were you taking it?" he asked. Tala hesitated. "There is an old settlement 2 days from here, once shared by humans and my people. It is abandoned now, but inside is a communication beacon powerful enough to send a message across multiple systems." Caleb raised an eyebrow. "You want to broadcast the truth?" "Yes," she said. "If everyone hears at once, those creating the lie cannot twist the story." Caleb nodded slowly. It was risky, but it made sense. Secrets held power. Truth could break it. "We'll go at first light," he said. The rest of the night passed quietly, though neither slept deeply. Caleb took first watch, sitting outside with a blanket around his shoulders. The desert air smelled dry and sharp. He listened to the herd shifting softly and watched the sky for movement. Tala replaced him later without needing to be asked. When Caleb woke briefly, he saw her standing against the starlight, still as a statue, eyes scanning the distance. Morning came with pale gold light spreading across the sand. They packed quickly. Caleb secured supplies while Tala checked the weapons she carried, simple tools meant for defense, not aggression. Before leaving, Caleb programmed the fence to collapse automatically after a delay, guiding the herd toward a known grazing route where friendly settlers could find them. "You're leaving them?" Tala asked gently. "For now," Caleb said. "They'll be safer away from trouble." They mounted the skimmer and headed east. The journey felt different from the day before. Instead of running blindly, they moved with purpose. Tall rock formations rose around them like silent guardians. Strange desert plants glowed faintly blue under the sun, feeding on minerals hidden beneath the sand. As they traveled, conversation came easier. "You were not always a herder," Tala said after a while. Caleb chuckled softly. "What gave it away?" "Your movements during the chase," she replied. "You think like a soldier." "Long time ago I served as a scout. Didn't end well." That respect made him appreciate her more. "And you?" he asked. "Before messenger work?" She looked toward the horizon. "I was raised to be a warrior. But I learned that fighting without purpose only creates more loss." Caleb nodded. He understood that feeling deeply. By afternoon, the abandoned settlement came into view. Broken towers rose from the desert like old bones. Some buildings leaned at strange angles, half buried in sand. Rusted wind turbines stood still, their blades frozen. The place felt quiet, but not empty, like memories still walked its streets. Caleb slowed the skimmer. "You're sure this is safe?" he asked. "No place is safe," Tala said calmly, "but this is necessary." They entered cautiously. The air felt cooler between the structures. Old signs written in multiple languages hung faded and cracked. Caleb imagined the town years ago. Crowded markets, shared laughter, hope for unity. Now only silence remained. Tala led him toward a tall building at the center. Inside, dust covered everything. Old chairs lay overturned. Broken glass crunched under their boots. At the far end stood the beacon, a tall pillar of metal and crystal, still faintly powered. Soft light pulsed inside it like a sleeping heart. "It still works," Tala said with relief. She approached carefully and removed a panel. Ancient controls flickered to life. Caleb watched the entrance, keeping guard. He felt uneasy. Places like this held too many echoes. "How long?" he asked. "Not long," she replied, "but once activated, it will reveal our location." Caleb nodded. "Then we better be ready." Outside, wind picked up, pushing sand through broken windows. Shadows shifted across the walls. Minutes passed. Then Caleb's communicator buzzed softly. Movement detected. He stiffened. Through a cracked window, he saw distant shapes approaching. 3, maybe 4 skimmers. "They're here," he said. Tala did not stop working. I need a few more minutes. Caleb stepped outside and studied the terrain. Open ground surrounded the settlement, but nearby stood a narrow street lined with old fences and debris. An idea formed. He ran back inside. Finish fast. I'll slow them down. Without waiting for protest, he grabbed a portable noise emitter from his pack and sprinted toward the street. He activated it, sending loud pulses across the desert, confusing sensors. The approaching skimmers slowed, trying to locate the signal. Caleb moved like he used to as a scout, silent, quick, using cover and angles. He knocked over old metal sheets, creating obstacles. He opened broken gates so drifting sand would obscure visibility. A shot flashed near him, striking the ground. They had seen him. He ducked behind a wall, heart racing but steady. Inside the building, Tala inserted the data chip into the beacon. Lights flared brighter. The system hummed as it connected to distant satellites. Outside, Caleb guided the hunters into tighter streets, forcing them to slow. One skimmer crashed into a fallen tower, sparks flying. "Come on," he whispered, buying time. Finally, Tala's voice came through his communicator. "It is ready!" Caleb ran back toward the building as enemy figures dismounted behind him. They entered together just as the beacon activated fully. Light filled the room, bright and steady. Tala stood before the controls, her expression strong and calm. "The truth will be heard," she said. Outside, footsteps approached it. Caleb took position beside her, ready for whatever came next. The moment felt heavy, like standing at the edge of history. The beacon's light filled the old building like a rising sun. Soft white energy flowed through the crystal pillar, spreading across the cracked walls and broken floor. Dust lifted into the air, glowing gently. Tala stood before the control panel, her hands steady even though danger closed in from outside. Caleb positioned himself near the entrance, watching the shadows moving beyond the doorway. He could hear boots on metal, careful and slow. The hunters were not rushing anymore. They knew the escape options were few. "How long?" Caleb asked quietly without looking away from the door. "A few minutes," Tala replied. "The system is connecting to distant relays. Once the signal begins, it cannot be stopped." "Then we hold." He checked his rope and tools again. He did not carry heavy weapons. He had always believed survival came more from thinking than shooting. Still, he prepared for whatever might happen. The first hunter stepped into view at the doorway. He wore a long dark coat and a mask covering the lower half of his face. Behind him stood two others, weapons ready but not firing yet. "Enough running," the man said calmly. "Give us the device and no one gets hurt." "You've been chasing the wrong people." The man tilted his head slightly. "You misunderstand. We are preventing chaos. The message she carries will destroy fragile peace." Tala spoke from behind Caleb, her voice clear. "It will expose lies." "That is what you fear." The hunter's eyes flicked toward her. "Truth is dangerous when people are not ready for it." Caleb felt anger rise in his chest. He had heard similar words before from those who wanted control. "Sounds like you just don't want to lose power." The man did not answer. Instead, he raised one hand slightly, signaling patience to his companions. "Tala," he said, addressing her directly, "you were respected once. You were trusted. Walk away from this and we can forget what happened." She stepped forward slightly, though she stayed behind Caleb. "Peace built on lies is not peace," she said quietly. The beacon behind her pulsed brighter. A soft tone echoed through the room as the system prepared to transmit. Outside, more footsteps approached. Caleb realized they were surrounded. He leaned closer to Tala without turning. "Any faster? I cannot rush it," she said softly. Caleb exhaled slowly. "Then we stall." The hunter stepped forward again. "Last chance. I don't respond well to threats." A tense silence filled the room. Then suddenly the building shook as wind rushed through broken windows. Sand blew inside, swirling around the glowing beacon. The hunters hesitated for just a moment, adjusting their footing. Caleb used that moment. He tossed a small metal device onto the floor between them. It exploded with loud sound and bright light, not harmful but disorienting. The hunters staggered back instinctively. "Now," he said. Tala pressed the final command on the panel. The beacon erupted with light. A column of energy shot upward through the broken ceiling, reaching toward the sky. A deep humming sound filled the air as the transmission began. Outside, the sky itself seemed to shimmer. The hunters froze, realizing they were too late. "You fool," one of them muttered. The leader lowered his weapon slightly, watching the beam of light. "What have you done?" he asked quietly. Tala turned to face him fully. I told the truth. The beacon's voice system activated, broadcasting her recorded message across multiple channels. Her voice echoed clearly, explaining the false transmission, naming those responsible for manipulating conflict between factions. Evidence flowed alongside her words: data streams, recordings, timestamps. Caleb listened, feeling the weight of her courage. This was not just survival anymore, this was history-changing. Outside, distant engines stopped. Some of the hunters' allies seemed unsure now. The message was spreading faster than anyone could contain. The leader's shoulders sagged slightly. You have started something you cannot control. Tala nodded calmly. Yes, truth always grows beyond control. The man studied her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he lowered his weapon completely. It is finished, he said quietly to his companions. They hesitated but obeyed, stepping back. Caleb blinked, surprised. He had expected a fight until the end. You're leaving? He asked cautiously. The man looked at him. The battle has changed. Killing you now would only prove her right. Without another word, the hunters turned and walked out into the desert. Silence returned slowly. The beacon continued glowing, finishing its transmission. Tala released a breath she had been holding for days. It is done, he said softly. Caleb finally allowed himself to relax slightly. You did it. They stepped outside together. The desert looked different somehow, as if the air itself felt lighter. The beam of light faded gradually as the transmission completed. Far in the distance, some skimmers lifted into the sky and left. Others remained still, uncertain what to do next. Tala watched the horizon. Many will be angry, she said. Some will deny the truth. But many will listen. Change takes time. She turned to him. You stayed when leaving would have been easier. He shrugged gently. Guess I stopped thinking about leaving when you said you were alone. It was the first real smile he had seen from her. And now? She asked. What happens to you? Caleb looked toward the empty road leading back across the desert. I still have a herd somewhere waiting. Still got work. She nodded slowly, understanding. My path is uncertain, she admitted. My people may welcome me or reject me. Caleb considered that. You don't have to decide tonight. They returned to the skimmer as the sun began to rise, painting the ruins in warm gold light. Caleb started the engine, and the familiar hum felt grounding after everything. As they left the abandoned settlement behind, the world felt wider, full of possibility. After some time riding in silence, Tala spoke again. When you told me to come with you at the market, why did you say it like that? Caleb chuckled softly. Honestly, I was nervous. Words came out wrong. She tilted her head slightly. It sounded like certainty. Maybe I just knew you needed a way out, he said. She studied him thoughtfully. And now? Caleb smiled toward the horizon. Now, I guess we see where the road goes. Tala looked ahead as well. The desert stretched endless before them, but it no longer felt lonely. Two travelers moved forward together, not as strangers, but as partners shaped by shared risk and trust. Behind them the beacon stood silent again, its message already traveling across the stars, carrying truth farther than either of them could ever ride.